Hey, BJ.
Hey, Steve. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, glad to be here and fun weekend. And why don't we jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do that because we want to be respectful of time, and we're just a couple of minutes late starting out here. So normally we look for people that have done, look for coaches that have done great things that almost nobody knows about. Some junior coaches or Division threes or just somebody that nobody's ever heard of. And in this case today is a little different that way, in that if you've been following volleyball for a while, our guest today is done just about everything in volleyball. So let's bring Tom in, and then we'll get going. This is Tom Sorensen, our guest today. Welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. So
I
for
like
people
talking
that
about myself.
go ahead, yeah.
I like talking about myself, so it's great,
Yeah, no kidding. So if you haven't been watching volleyball for the last 30 years, maybe you don't know of Tom. So just a quick rundown. He's a Wisconsin guy, so obviously a hero to people here, especially the old schooler volleyballers. All-American days at Pepperdine, made a couple of dozen or so international rosters for USA, including, I'm guessing the highlight would be the Atlanta Olympics in '96. Played professionally as well. Yeah, I know. Sore spot.
The highlight is probably the '94 World Championships where we won the bronze, which
Yeah,
is putting it into context. We had just come off an 0-12 World League. In
right.
that same summer, we were 0-12 in the World League, and then we kind of got to the World Championships. People expected very little, and we lost in 5 in the semifinals to get to the gold medal match, and we beat Cuba in the bronze medal match. And that's probably the highlight because it really came out of nowhere after I said that really, really bad World League. And then we added Lloyd Ball, Bob Staverlik, and Scott Fortune were the main guys, and we wound up
That's
taking a
right.
bronze. So that was probably the highlight because I was like, coming off an 0-12 World League, a bronze medal in the World Championships feels like a gold medal. Honestly, it
Yeah.
was pretty fun ride.
Well, winning a bronze, a lot of people say winning a bronze feels better than losing that gold medal match.
Getting the
Just
silver,
the fact
yeah.
that you know. But yeah, okay. I'll take note of that World League bronze is the bigger one, and still then played professionally a few years, and is still playing. And correct me if I'm wrong. You won the Masters 50 and over MVP at U.S. Open this year.
Yeah, 2 years back, I wound up getting back in shape, and I hadn't played in like 15 years, probably 15 years or more. Besides, coaching stuff, serving and down balls and stuff like that. I do that all the time, but I hadn't played actual volleyball in a long time, and I got back into it and played, and we won the championship, and I got the MVP. So it was pretty fun.
How did you feel playing after that long? I mean, for playing for real again.
It was. I always tell people like I don't want to play if I'm not in good shape. I'm not going to play just to play. Like I even when the guy messaged me to play, I was like, I'm not going there just to mess around. I'm going there to win. I'm going there to win MVP. I'm going there for everything. It's like if I do it, I do it 100%, or I don't do it at all. Kind of is the way I go about it. But it felt good. It went as I thought. Like I got better every day because I just hadn't played in so long, and I played middle, which was great because that way I didn't have to time a set. Like I have to wait for like a high ball because I had no idea like the timing. Like I could jump and land by the time the ball came because like I'm probably jumping 10 to 15 inches lower than I was back when I played. So I just jumped up and he put the ball somewhere and I would just deal with it. And
That's cool. That's awesome. Who set you for your 50s team?
a guy named Pat Ryan,
Oh, okay.
who we're like Facebook friends now, and he still messages me now. He's like, "You gonna play this year? You gonna play this year?" Like, I have started walking, getting back in shape, so I'm pondering it. But I got to drop about another 45 pounds or something before I play. Because right now I'm about 245 right now, and when I played 2 years ago, I was about under 200 pounds.
I was gonna say you played around 190, 195 when you were playing.
Yeah, that was my playing weight, my best playing weight. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was never a guy who could put on bulk. Like no matter how much I lifted, I never put on any weight as far as muscle wise goes. I just didn't have that kind of frame. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at some pictures getting ready for this today, and I'm like, man, those guys look so young. You know, the pictures of you and Loy and Nygaard looks, you know, it looks like a kid. It
yeah,
was amazing. Yeah. So way goes. Let's start since we're on the talking men's a little bit. How did you get started in volleyball? And you know, being a Wisconsin guy, I know a little bit of the backstory, but tell us how you got started. It's something we ask everybody.
I started playing because my sister played. My sister was like an all-state, all-conference player. She was 6 feet tall, which at that time in 1985 was tall for a girl. 6 feet tall is now kind of like average. But at that time, she was a middle blocker, and she was a really good player. I think she probably could have played Division One had she, reached out and found people. But she was just kind of stuck here and never really found anything. But she was a really good volleyball player, and we play in the fall in Wisconsin, as you know, which is very different. So going into my freshman year, my sister was like, "You should go out for volleyball," and I wasn't doing anything else, and I thought I was a basketball player at that time, like most volleyball players start out. At least they did back then. And I was like, "Oh, it's a good complementary sport. Work on my vertical, a lot of the same movements and whatnot." So, I'll go play volleyball. And I also had a cousin, Kevin Sorensen,
Yeah.
who was my coach's brother, who would have been on the 1980 Olympic team if it hadn't been boycotted. So I had a little bit of and Gary Sorensen was the coach at Case, who's my father's first cousin. So like my first cousin once removed. I mean, I'm guessing if my sister didn't talk me into playing, I'm guessing Coach Sorensen would have been like, "Hey, you're playing," because Todd Reimer, right?
Yeah.
Played at Ball State opposite. I think he's still like the all-time kill leader at Ball State because of the old side-out scoring, but. He told me, we talked back in the day, like he didn't even want to play volleyball, but he was just so intimidated by Coach Sorensen that he didn't want to say no to him. Like Coach Sorensen kept his, "Hey, you're playing volleyball," and he's like, "Okay," So that's just how Coach was. He would just patrol the hallways for tall kids and be like, "You should play volleyball." Like that's probably how he got like half the guys out there. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like the more I started playing volleyball, the less I wanted to play basketball, and just kind of. But by my senior year, I didn't play basketball anymore.
So, which club did you play for? This is a Wisconsin guy question, of course. There were only a couple at that time. Who'd you play for?
My freshman year, it was Great Lakes Volleyball, which is like Terry Paulson and Gary Sorensen ran it, and then they stopped after that. And these weren't even clubs back in the way clubs are now. Like the coaches did not make money running these clubs. They probably lost money running these clubs. They were just literally like all-star teams, and then we did. Wisconsin Volleyball Club was just called. We trained at a Whitefish Bay my sophomore year, and that was like John Simon, who just retired from West Coast East.
Yeah.
And then my junior year and senior year, was called Evanston, which is out of Evanston, Illinois.
Oh.
That was just an all-star team. There was no sports performance boys team at that time. There was no other club team in Illinois at all, which is just crazy. And that was literally just him picking players from where you could find them, and bring them in. And that was funny too, because the story I like to tell is like Ball State had come to Wisconsin's state championship, and they wanted me to go to Ball State. They offered me like a full ride, and the guy's name is Gene Keefe, was our coach.
Yeah.
He reached out to Ball State about getting my phone number, and Ball State was like, "No." I was like, "What do you mean no?" I was like, "We don't want anyone else to see him. So we don't want him to go to national. We don't want him to go somewhere else because we don't want anyone else to see him." And Gene's like, "Come on." Like he knew my cousin Kevin. Like I can get his phone number. just give it to me. And they finally relented and gave me his phone, gave him my phone number. So it's kind of a funny story.
That is funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There'd be 100 of them, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, it's just like now I go to tournaments, stuff like that, like small little tournaments, and there are, 10 college coaches ever. Like back in the day, the Wisconsin State Championship literally had every team in the state at the tournament in one day. And that was the one time I saw a college coach there recruiting. Like college coaches never came to recruit in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though you could go to a tournament in one day and watch every player in the state in that one day.
I got a question for you in a little bit about that too.
Yeah.
We mentioned your international experience, and this is more just kind of volleyball opinion, but how good do we have it? You've seen the world of volleyball. You've been around the world playing.
Mhm.
How good do we have it in the United States as far as just our overall programming facility setup?
I mean, it's really top notch. I mean, I always like as a coach now, I'm always like, God, these kids are so lucky right now. They have all this opportunity to play. They can just find volleyball anywhere they want. They can find it. There's also the part of me that's like, I appreciate the way I had it because I had to find volleyball. Like I had to hunt down for volleyball. Like I had to go find wherever open gyms, wherever. I would watch volleyball by going to the back of the TV guide and looking at they'd have basketball, football, baseball, and be other sports. And I would literally every week we get the TV guide and I would look if there's any volleyball on TV. And then I would set my VCR, or our VCR, I should say, it wasn't mine. My parents bought it, but our VCR to record any volleyball. And then if it was good volleyball, I would watch it over and over and over again. There was a tape of Norseca finals that was in Cuba, it was in Havana, Cuba, at the Ciudad Deportiva. And I watched it so many times, and it had the big thing picture of Che Guevara looking over it and stuff like that in this gym. And I just watched his tapes over because it was such. USA actually lost in 5 because Craig Buck was hurt and he wasn't playing. That Mark Miller was the other middle at that time, and it was a great match. And I know it backwards and forwards because I watched it so many times. But like, I just had to hunt down volleyball. I had to find grass triples tournaments on the weekends in Wisconsin, like up in West Allis and all that stuff. And like, you just go weekend to weekend, and you just find your little clique. You'd find the group of people that knew where stuff was, and then you'd go find that volleyball and play. And it's like, it made me just appreciate volleyball so much more because I had to find it. Like with Evanston, we would drive out to Pennsylvania to play in a high school tournament just to play boys volleyball. We'd play men's tournaments at University of Illinois Chicago Circle just to play volleyball. And we would beat a lot of men's teams, and they did not like that at all. But I mean, I love finding, like when I was recruiting, I love finding kids that were like, they're from Montana. Or I had a kid named Brennan who was from Wyoming. His mom was a volleyball coach, and he had no boys volleyball. I love those kids that have to work so hard to play volleyball.
Yeah, that's cool.
And to me,
Yeah, I was thinking about, I'm a generation older than you are. So I think about, I lived in the Metro New York area for a while, and I remember having to scour sporting goods stores to find a Tachikara ball anywhere because that was the ball at that time. That was the ball to have. And then to go, well, you brought it and everybody's, oh, you got one of those. Great, we can play with it. Or playing in Central Park, you kind of went in the pecking order of pickup games. You had to go earn your way up the nets and that kind of thing. And now you can find it, easily online. You can make connections with players and do all kinds of great stuff these days, which is fantastic.
Like how players just don't, how many volleyball players don't watch volleyball is what I don't understand at all. Like I beg my kids to watch volleyball. Like, these people have already solved the riddle, and you can watch them and learn from them and do what they do. Like there's so many places like, oh my God, that guy did that. I'm going to do that next time that happens to me, or if I get in that situation. It's like instead of learning all on your own through experience, learn from the people that have already done it and are doing it well right now, and copy what they do. And there's so many volleyball players that just don't watch volleyball, and I don't understand it. Like all my boys and stuff, like I send the link to the offtheblockblog.com. I'm like, hey, bookmark this. You can literally find every men's volleyball match and watch them play all the time. Like,
yeah.
And it just, I I was such a volleyball fiend. Like my best day of the month was when Volleyball Monthly came in the mail.
Yeah,
Volleyball Monthly arrived in the
exactly.
mail, like I read it cover to cover. Like I knew every volleyball camp that was in the back. I knew every coach. I knew like I remember when I first started recruiting, Marv was still coaching at Pepperdine at that time. And I was talking to this kid. I'm like, I went to Pepperdine. I'm kind of like, I'm the Church of Marv Dunphy, basically, is my philosophy. And this kid's like, who's Marv Dunphy? And I'm like, you play volleyball, but you don't know who Marv Dunphy is? Like, how is that? I would understand right now because he hasn't been coaching for 4 or 5 years. But at that time, it's like, you play volleyball and you don't know who Marv Dunphy is. Like, that just blew me away. I was like,
Most of my guys
how is
don't know who Karch is.
yeah, I know. It's like,
But it is,
So
but that's the world, right? So we got to deal with it.
yeah,
that's true.
yeah.
When you were coming out of high school, I mean, you're obviously pretty well known. What was it that attracted you to going to Pepperdine and working with Marv? You said at one point, I think it might have been your Hall of Fame. No, it was Marv that said he went out to see you at a high school game at one point.
Mhm.
I know that wasn't the reason, but I just thought, wow, that doesn't happen anymore. But what was it about him?
Well, it's just like saying that I was like a volleyball nerd, and like I literally just recorded every single men's volleyball match from the '88 Olympics. Like I literally sat because remember back in that day it was just on NBC and that's all, and it was like 5 or 6 different sports on the 3 hour broadcast, and I would sit there with my hand on the pause button, ready to unpause the record whenever the men's volleyball came on. So I had all like these curated tapes of just men's volleyball that I eventually wound up giving to Bob Stavertlik because I played with Bob, and Bob's like, I've never seen those things. I'm like, I got them all on tape, and my mom sent the videotapes out, and I gave those tapes to Bob Stavertlik.
That's cool.
But like, I'm watching all the volleyball, and which means my parents are watching all the volleyball too because they're, we're all sitting in the same room. So basically, like Marv got home from the Olympics and called me like 2 days later, and I remember my mom answered the phone, and my mom's like, "It's Marv Dunphy on the phone," and I'm just like, "Oh my god!" Like I'm still nervous today when Marv calls me. Like
Yeah.
when Marv calls me and I see it's him calling me, I'm like, oh, it's Marv, it's Marv. And I was like, I don't, we should be colleagues now, but I don't feel like a colleague because he's Marv. It's like, but I mean, he would call me and it's like, I mean, it was just, I just love the guy. It's like, I went on 4 trips. I went to UC Santa Barbara, which I went there when they played UNLV in basketball, which is like a big week. That was back in the day. That was a big rivalry. UC Santa Barbara and UNLV. I went to USC when they played UCLA in football, and I went to Ohio State when they played Michigan in football. And Pepperdine I went when they played Loyola Marymount, which back then uh, was a school like big basketball school now up in Seattle.
Oh,
Never mind, like
yeah. Gonzaga.
Gonzaga. Yeah, Gonzaga was nothing back then. It was Loyola and it was Pepperdine. So we went when they played Loyola back when Hank Gathers was on the team and stuff. But I mean, I
Oh,
probably had the least amount of fun at my trip to Pepperdine, but I just love Marv so much.
I just like listening to him speak. I've never met him in person. I've heard him speak a couple of times, and I've watched a lot of video. And just the way he talks uh, is really inviting. He just seems so calm. Um, I don't know if he's like that all the time, but and
All the
don't
time,
give me any secrets. But I get the feeling that he's just calm.
especially around the players. He's always calm. Like when I was on the bench with him one time, coaching I was there briefly. Like after my USA career I went back to Pepperdine for a little bit before I played in Spain. But it's like, I mean, the most he says, like when someone makes a mistake, he'll be like, "Oh, help me, Rhonda." That's like as far as he gets on the bench. It's like, but he felt like his job was to instill belief in yourself, like make you believe. Like when I played for Doug Beal, I felt like he was always trying to break people down,
Yeah.
where Marv was always trying to build guys up, always making you feel like you're the best player in the room and stuff like. So it's just there's very very few negative things ever said from Marv. I don't remember anything. I don't remember a lot of the specific volleyball coaching from Marv. I remember more of the life lessons from Marv.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember any time where he's like, "Oh, you got to do this," and I was like, "Oh my god, I just figured it out." It's more like, just one of his favorite expressions is like, "You intimidate with class and ability." Like talking through the net, that doesn't intimidate. Class and ability, that's what intimidates. Like, I told a story to David Niffen, the coach for UC Irvine.
Yeah.
We were coaching together in one of the USA programs, and I told him a story about we went to Canada to play a qualifier. I can't remember if it was for the World Cup or World Championships. It was one of those. And before the tournament, Canada was like, you read a lot of articles like, "Oh, this is our time. We're playing at home. We have all our guys back." They're being confident, which you should be. Of course, you should. If you're an athlete and you're not confident, you're doing something wrong. And I remember we wound up beating them in 4 up there. And after the match, I was just being a knucklehead. One of Mark's favorite words, knuckleheads. And I was like, "Oh man, they talk so much crap and stuff like that. We beat those guys." I was just talking trash about Canada. And Marv just stops me and goes, "Hey, blowing out their candle doesn't make it any brighter in here." And I was just like, "Yeah, you're kind of right." It's like just kind of things like you don't have to tear people down to make things better. It's like enjoy the victory and move on. So like Niffen, like I got a text from Niffen like some months later. It's like, "Hey, I got to use that story, or I got to say that expression. Like blowing out their candle doesn't make it any brighter in here." And I was like, "Yeah." So it's stuff like that I remember a lot more than the actual technical volleyball stuff.
I think that's a great point. Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I think I'll steal that. I've been working with my players and parents about respect, because you get into we were at a tournament yesterday, and I'd say about half the teams were into "you can't do that, how high's the net too high," all that stuff when somebody makes a mistake. And I'm like,
I can't do that stuff.
I talk to I talk to my fans. We keep it to a minimum, but the fans, I can't go up and go to every fan. But the last 2 weeks, I told the story earlier about kind of going over and talking to my fans. But we also had one of our fans whistling when the other person served from the other team, and we were at their place, and their coach is a great guy, and we're on the same wavelength. So I just went the R2, same thing. R2, "Hey, can I go talk to my fans for a second?" And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead." Calls, lets him know. I go over to the guys. I said, "We don't whistle while we just don't do that. I know you guys are new, and they're basketball fans or they're football fans, and they're used to doing that kind of stuff. And this is not what we do. You guys are new to the program. Please don't. I don't know who you are." And I just go, my fans, Marco's team, Marco's fans don't do this. And I've had that happen a couple of times, and it helps a lot. The fans start to go, "Okay, why is he saying that?" And then there's some fans who are like, "I can't believe he's doing that." I'm like, "Well, I don't care." My wife's like, "You should lighten up." I'm like, "No, that's not what I'm doing. I want my fans to be really respectful, and I want people to come away and go, they are good sportsmen first, and then we'll be good players."
Some of my favorite compliments I've ever gotten are not, "You're my favorite volleyball player." I got stuff like, "You always seem to be a really nice guy. You always seem like a good guy. You seem like a decent guy." It's like, and those are some of my favorite things I've ever heard from people that I've met later on in life that watched me play volleyball as a younger person.
Yeah, and that was the sense. I remember, this isn't a story about you, but I remember Nygaard was somewhat the same. And when UCLA lost to Penn State in the championship, in the NCAA championship, Nygaard went and shook every single one of their hands and said, "Good job." And the rest of the team had already gone out to the locker room. And I don't know if it's
a lot of guys
a thing or just a nice guy thing, but we all felt the same way about both of you guys.
Yeah, there's always for me. There's always I had a strong bond with anyone from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Like when I went back to Pepperdine, I think like 2000, and we would go play other teams. And the first thing I'd almost always do is look at like the rosters and see if there's any Wisconsin kids on the roster.
Yeah.
That's what always made me happy, is seeing other Wisconsin kids on another college volleyball team. Because before I went out there, the only Midwest kid that I remember that I know of that did something out there was Rod Wild.
Right.
Was from Fort Dodge, Iowa, which is like, I mean, still no one else has ever come from Fort Dodge, Iowa and played D1 volleyball anywhere. And Rod did it in like 1976, 75. I went out there, like,
Yeah.
but like for me, I feel proud because I feel like I opened the door for so many other people that started people. Oh, you can like I remember talking to Marv on the phone and being like, you know, this is a story I tell every single interview, but it's my favorite story. And it was like talking to Marv on the phone, like, well, I'm just a kid from Wisconsin. You know, can I do this? Can I go out to California and play volleyball? That's where all the volleyball players play, blah, blah. And he said, it's not where you are, it's who you are, which is the thing that I always like to tell people when people start to doubt and where they come from. And that's something that always stuck with me.
Yeah. So you're in a loose sense, you're possibly in the John Wooden coaching tree. Marv spent a lot of time with Coach Wooden and was mentored by him and wrote his PhD dissertation on
Absolutely.
Wooden.
I got to meet Coach Wooden. Coach Wooden came and spoke at Pepperdine, and Marv knew I was a big basketball fan. Like I knew, especially like college basketball and stuff like that. And he's like, because Marv's what got him to come speak at Pepperdine because they had such a good, close relationship. And Marv's like, hey, do you want to go pick him up with me and bring him back to Pepperdine? Like, absolutely. So I got to go to Coach Wooden's apartment and stuff like that and talk to him and just like talk stories about, you know, Bill Walton and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and whatnot. So it was like really, really cool experience. I get to do that. Like something that very, very few people have gotten to do.
Yeah, it's an amazing. I actually read the dissertation, which I haven't read many of them, but I got a copy of it through channels somehow and read, and it was pretty interesting reading. One of the cool stories that Marv told about that is he left it for Coach Wooden to read, just to make sure that there wasn't anything in there that that the coach wouldn't want to have made public. And Marv gets this dissertation back, and there's all sorts of marks in the margins and grammar corrections and punctuation and maybe say it this way instead of that way. I mean, he went over the whole thing. What a piece of gold that would be to have.
Yeah, I mean, it was phenomenal. I remember he spoke at it was called Convocation every Monday at Pepperdine, like Monday morning, like 10 p.m. Like everyone got together in the field house. And it was always like, what's going on, this and that. And there would always be one speaker. And John Wooden was there speaking. And so many people just didn't care. No one had phones at that time or anything like that, but people were just not paying attention. I was like, this is John Wooden. You know, how are you not listening to this right now?
How many coaches smiled when you watched Ted Lasso and you saw his assistant hang up the pyramid on the wall?
Oh, yeah, for sure. My girlfriend and I just did a rewatch of Ted Lasso since the new season's coming out on March 15th or something like that. So we're very excited for that.
What's if you can remember any of these details? I've always wanted to ask somebody this. What's a Dunphy practice like? What's a kind of a basic 2 hours like in his gym?
For us, I think Marv likes to find an identity for his team, and then he kind of hones in on that identity. I think for us, he really thought we had to be a side-out team, like really good serve receive and really good at siding out. And I just remember we had this drill, and at that, I look at Pepperdine's bench now, and like there's like 20 guys on the bench and stuff like that. It's just this huge team, huge roster. For us, we maybe had like 13, 14 guys, and you know we weren't very deep at all. Like if we had any injuries, like the year we won the national championship, we had no backup setter. Like Rick McLaughlin, who coaches UC Santa Barbara right now, was our second setter in practice. He was like our assistant, and then he came in and he would be the setter on the second team. And Deshaun Doffner was a graduate, and then he played the opposite on the other side. So that was the kind of teams we played against. We had this drill, I'll never forget, we had to side out 3 times in a row before the other team stop us once to get a big point, and then you'd rotate. And we lost that drill the entire year until like March or something. Finally in March, we wound up winning that drill finally. And it was like, we got this. Oh my God, we finally won this drill. And then I remember the following week we went to Northridge. And Northridge was always like the thorn in our side. They just had our number. They were like, I call them like the Island of Misfit Toys. They had this, Coley Clement and Kenny Lynch and stuff, and Adam Unger. And they just always had our number. They just always beat us. And we went into Northridge that week, and we beat them like 3 straight. I mean, like probably like an hour and 15 minutes where we just smoked them. And it was like, that's when our national championship thing started.
Yeah.
And we went into Northridge, we handled them easily, which we just had not done. Like, I had a losing record over my career against Northridge for sure.
Wow.
But we beat them and we went on to win that national championship that year. And I just remember like the belief building up and stuff like that. And I remember my best friend Bill, we were playing Long Beach State in the championship at that time it was the last WEVA. That was right before the MPS. It was the last year of the WEVA. And the two champions from each half play each other, and then the winner goes to the Final Four. And my buddy Bill's like, hey, how do you think it's going to go? I was like, oh, we're going to win. He's like, I know you're supposed to say that. And I was like, no, we are going to win. And it was like, I just felt so strongly about that. It was like, there was just this immense belief that just built up. And I just felt like going into the national championship game against Stanford, I remember myself and Leland Grant were talking about what we're going to do with our national championship rings. Like, oh, I'm never taking it off. I can't wait to get it, blah, blah, which I never wear. I don't even know where it is right now. Like, I think I've worn it like 3 times in my entire life, and that's just people wanted to see it. But it's like we were so confident that we were going to win that match that we were talking about beforehand. Like, we just knew we felt it,
I think that's one of the Go ahead.
I love talking to coaches and players, like in any sport, like when they get on like a championship run, like when was that moment you knew things were changing? When's the moment you knew you guys were on a roll or you're ready to go? So because there were definitely moments for me that I for sure knew that they were there.
And that confidence is coming out of Marv too. Like you said, just the building up of people. That's incredible. It's neat to hear that he was tailoring that practice to the players and not just doing the same 6 things in practice, every year.
Actually, we weren't a lot. Greenberg, I think, was like 6'1". Dane Blanton's like 6'3". We were not a huge team by any stretch, but we blocked okay. We weren't a great blocking team, but we were definitely a side out oriented team. Side out and serving team.
Right. So before I get into some of your coaching, what's any other influential coaches? I mean, obviously Marv is going to be at the top of the list for you, but who are some other coaches that you've worked with that you might want to name who have been big influences?
One of the things I tell and this is kind of a cop out as a coach, but I tell my players all the time is like, I don't think coaches matter that much. I think the player is what matters more.
I agree.
Like if coaches were what mattered the most, like all the best players come from all the same coaches. Like as a player, you find things everywhere. You get like, I talked about John Simon earlier from Wauwatosa East. He's like, I remember I was trying to hit quick, and all he did was he put an X on the floor, like off the net, and he's like, just jump from here, and you'll be fine. Because people always think tighter means faster. Like no, that's not what it means. Like just jump from this X, and I was like, oh my, like my world just opened up. Like oh my god, this is so much easier for jumping 4 feet off the net to hit this quick as opposed to jumping this tight to the net. It's like
that
I remember
X will be on my floor tomorrow.
yeah. And literally that's what. But also it's like the player has to be important to the player what you're coached. Like I've been coaching girls. I don't have a girls team, but I'm like a floater coach for these girls teams, and there's something that take it or seriously. But like every practice, I have to tell them we do this drill where it's like cooperative, and you rotate around and right front sets to left front all the time, and they always pass the ball to right of center to put the ball right on the center's head, as opposed to passing it to the middle, so the person can come forward and set the ball. And every single practice, I tell them, we pass free balls to the middle. Like, stop doing it. And they every single practice they come back and they do the exact same thing again. I'm like, if what I tell you is not important to you, it doesn't matter what I say. Like, if you don't take any of this to heart, it literally does not matter at all what I say. I've said for 16 practices in a row to pass the free balls to the middle. And half of them still don't do it. It just drives me bananas. I remember Mary Kaminsky, who coached at Michigan Tech University up in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Me and my friend went to do a camp at UW Parkside with Terry Paulson. We're the first two boys ever to do his camp because we were like, we just wanted to play volleyball. Can we please come to your camp, even though it's a girls' camp? It was a day camp, so it wasn't a big deal. We were like staying overnight or anything. But he's like, absolutely, just sign up and come. And we went in there, and Mary Kaminsky was one of the people working there. And this was after my junior year. I was state player of the year. We lost in the finals, whatever. And she watched me play, and this is the first time I'd ever heard this. She's like, you know what? You're really good, but you're goofy-footed. You need to change your footwork. And I was just like, okay, if that's what I got to do, that's what I do. So literally, like, for the entirety of the summer until the season, like, I did approaches in my living room, 2-step, 3-step, 4-step, every night, hundreds of approaches. And I tell this to my kids, and I feel like when I tell kids this, I feel like they just roll their eyes. Like no, I literally did hundreds upon hundreds and hundreds of approaches just to try and get comfortable. And I thought I did so many that, no problem. It'd be really easy. And I'd go back to the volleyball court, and I'd go right back to being goofy-footed again. Yeah. And it took me so long. That's why one of the things I noticed on any player immediately is if they have a backwards approach.
Yeah.
Although
I had a conversation with Peter Vint about that one time. I said, what would you recommend? And he said, well, let me tell you a story. He said, I had a guy who had like a 6'7" opposite, and he was goofy-footed, and he was trying to sort him out. And I said, how's he play? And he goes, oh, he's a beast. He's unbelievable. I'm like, let him play. And I'm like, okay. So there comes a point when you've trained all that up, but
for sure. I mean, I've known. Andrea Gardini for Italy was a goofy-footed middle. Lubomir Gana for Bulgaria is a goofy-footed opposite. I mean, it's certainly possible to be goofy-footed.
Yeah, it's not ideal,
but it's better. I mean, like Davide Gardini, Andrea Gardini's son, played at BYU. He was not goofy-footed. I'm pretty sure his father was not like, you should be goofy-footed. I'm pretty sure he's like,
right. No. It's nothing we train.
We could probably talk about goofy foot for an hour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's so hard to, if you pick up a tip in the middle and then try to get out and hit outside, there's no way you can do that goofy-footed. It's like,
yeah.
But you can be a middle blocker, and it's like, it's possible to be better. I'm so glad that I went through that because it taught me so much about volleyball.
It probably also kept you from getting hurt as much.
That and just like understanding like how people's approaches affected where they swung and stuff like that. So I remember two people. I was telling my buddy Pat Washington was a lefty at Horlick, and he was goofy-footed.
Oh man!
And then I'm guessing it's we're talking to volleyball people, so I can be kind of in their rotation too. When he was middle front, he would just run a front one. Right. And I blocked him every single time he did that because he only hit it to 5. Right. Because I knew he's goofy. He's not going to be able to turn that ball back. I was like, and it literally got to a point. He tells me now, he's like, he would literally tell the center, "Don't set me, man. He's going to block me." He's like, and there was another middle at West House Hale who was goofy-footed, right-handed guy who always hit it back to 1, and I would block him every time. It's like because I watched their approach, I knew how they did it, and I paid attention. I was like, I never understood how people don't know this stuff. It's like.
Well, one part of that, and this is we kind of do this for coaches who are, I'm going to say in the trenches. It's not the right term, but I get what I get. I'm at a school where volleyball's, well, first of all, I'm in high school, so I get, it's not athletes who've chosen to spend a bunch of money to be at a club and kind of get into the pecking order. But you kind of get what you get, and you also get all the conflicts. I've got kids who can't, in Arizona, kids can go to schools quite a long distance from their home if they want to. Then you can go to any school you want to go to, essentially. So I have kids who can't get rides. I have kids who have to watch their brothers and sisters. So, I've got kids in the musical because we're an art school and all of those things. Yeah. And you kind of have to figure out, all those dynamics and figure out what motivates each player to play and bring them along the way you can.
For sure.
And so if I benched every player for not, for missing something because they've got something else going on, I wouldn't have anybody on the court. So it's, you kind of have to figure that out.
The number of excuses that I hear for kids not making practice just blow me away all the time. I mean, I had one, I got to have my mom's birthday dinner. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, if your mom is making you go to, like, Mom, you're an adult. Like, have your birthday dinner on not your birthday. Who cares? It's like,
Right.
just the things I hear. Like, my parents did not allow me to miss practice.
Yeah.
Like, there was a time when I played football, and I had a brutal coach. I mean, he was like a coach that was, if you weren't hitting hard enough, he would take you and throw you in other guys and stuff like that. And like, I wanted to quit, and my parents were like, no. Like, if you don't want to play next year, you don't have to, but you're not going to quit. You made a commitment to this team, and you're going to finish this year. And if you don't want to play next year, and I had friends on that same team that quit.
Yeah.
And later on in life, other things too. I tell in college, you have kids that quit. When I coached at Ottawa University, and I always told every kid, like, just be careful, because the first time you quit is the hardest time. Every time you quit after that, it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I can hear Marv saying, find solutions, not excuses.
It's just, we get to be old and all this stuff, like all this transfer portal world and club world we live in now. It's so different. It's like, club is so hard because the parents have the power in the club, not the coaches.
Right.
They're paying. So, like, you want the parents to stay on the club, you want them to be happy. So it's like, oh, okay, if they want to miss for whatever, that's fine. It's like, but at the same time, it's the transfer portal world we live in. Like I coached with a guy who coached for Mavs in Kansas, which is a very good club, and he was coaching like 13s or 14s or something like that. And in their first tournament, he had a libero and one person playing DS, playing back row for somebody. Well, the DS was playing better than the libero, so he switched them later in the tournament. So the libero, the person that got switched from libero to DS came in the following Monday, quit the club, and they're going to go to another club. And I'm just like, this is the lesson you're going to teach your child? Like,
Right.
the moment things don't go perfectly for you, you quit and then go to another place? Like, how about say, get better? That's what you should be telling your kids. Like, get better at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another one of my favorite stories is I just joined the U.S. team in '93. I was down there for a month, couple of months or whatever, and I felt like I should be playing. So I call up Marv, and I'm talking to Marv on the phone, blah, blah, blah. Pissing and moaning to Marv about how I'm not playing, whatever. Marv listens to me for a few minutes, and then he finally stops me. He's like, here's the thing. You have to be so good that they can't afford not to play you. I mean, that's the last time we talked about that.
Yeah.
He's like, that's it. Like, you have to be so good that they can't afford not to play you.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
a
the
great
same
way
thing
of saying it.
about playing time and whatnot. It's like, I'm a coach. I want to win. I'm not putting you on the bench because that's helping us lose. I'm putting you on the bench because I think that other person is better.
Yeah.
You're going to get your chances. But,
Yeah, that's an easy way to tell someone that it's time for you to get better. Is go sit them down for a little while.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who was a track coach. I'm like, God, I envy you so much because you can just be like, look at the time. They're 3 seconds faster than you. Whatever, it's
Yeah.
literally cut and dry
Yeah.
right there on the page. You can see that they're doing better than you. So it's like, there's a glory to that, to being in that sport. We can just do that.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this. Why coaching? I mean, you did everything in the volleyball world there was to do. You played at the high school championship level, college championship, and international level. What draws you to coaching? Why do you want to go through that? I mean, essentially, not really starting over, but it's really a different profession than playing.
I mean, of all the things in my life that I've been super passionate about, I think volleyball's like been the main thing. So it's been really easy for me. And I'm not the greatest technical coach by any stretch of the imagination. Like, actually, like, the things that I was best at as a player might be the worst things I've been coaching at, because I was never taught technically how to hit. I just had good technique from the start. Like, no one ever, you got to get your elbow up and you got to get, like, I just had good technique. So I'm actually a better coach. I coach passing better than I coach hitting, even though I was a much better hitter than I was a passer, just because I was coached so much more as a passer, and I worked on it technically so much more than I did hitting. But for me, like, the message I can get across best is what it takes to become elite, like the things you have to do besides practice. Like I tell my kids all the time is like, you have to do more than just practice. You have to, like, there's no excuse to have bad footwork, because footwork you can do anywhere. You can practice your footwork at home. All you need is a floor. Like, the hardest thing about volleyball is like you need other people for so many skills to get better at. But there's certainly like blocking footwork, approaching, shuffling when you pass, like that stuff. There's no excuse to not have that down because you can do it on your own. And this whole thing, like we talk about like players, like I talk about guys like Steph Curry. You think Steph Curry only did basketball practice, like not anything extra besides basketball practice? No, he shot millions and millions of balls on his own. He's also the excuse I use too when like kids aren't being recruited as highly as they'd like to be. I'm like, recruiters don't know everything. Like, Steph Curry was not recruited by any Division I basketball team, any major D1 team.
Right.
And he still went on to become this obviously great player. Like, people don't know what you know.
Yeah, I have a mini example of that right now. I have a setter who's become very good. He played middle for me first year, and I just whispered in his ear because he was a gym rat. Hey, you might want to play setter. And he's worked his butt off. And the kids are like, how did Daniel get so good? Like, he put the time in. Everywhere he can, he's putting the time in. You want to put the time in, you can get good.
There's this kid named Jaden Hahn who's he's a freshman right now, but he went from, and I know his dad's a coach. And he didn't play any sports, he hardly anything at all, and he just decided he wanted to become a good volleyball player. And he made himself into a really, really good volleyball player in like a year because he worked so hard beyond club practice and doing it home. And they had like a net set up outside. He'd hit balls out there. And it's like, he literally, like, it wasn't coaching that made him good. He literally made himself into a good player just by working extra. And it's just like, it was a fun ride to watch. Like, my coaching is honestly, most of my coaching is like, just hit the ball. Like, stop. Like, we're in practice. I have so many girls that stop all the time when the ball's above the net and bump the ball over the net. It's like, I know you can do that. That doesn't help. Like, no coach ever says, hey, do you see that girl bump the ball over the net? Like, we're in practice. We're not even keeping score right now. Just jump and hit it. Who cares? Like, you don't learn to do it by not doing it. That's that drives me crazy. Like when a pass is high and the setter decides to bump set it instead of set it with their hands because it's going to be difficult because the pass is high. It's like, you're not going to learn to do it by not doing it. Just do it. Who cares about the mistakes? Stop worrying about making so many mistakes in practice. This is the time.
Yeah. That's really hard with girls.
In matches, you want to be 80% of the player you are in practice. Like, you don't want to take all those swings in a match that you're taking in practice. But when your 100% gets bigger, your 80% gets bigger.
Yeah.
So I honestly believe I was the most willing player to ever hit any ball that's above the net. Whether it's 15 feet off the net, 20 feet off the net, I did not care. I jumped and hit it every single time. There's so many balls I see people like stop. I'm like, hit the ball. Come on, you can hit that ball. You're 6'6", you're big. It's just the fear of making mistakes is like the biggest hindrance to becoming a better, I think, in any sport. I think that's in life, not just volleyball, but like when you're afraid of making mistakes, you don't improve that much. Like, when you're in practice, you have to encourage kids to jump and hit every single ball. And then you tone it down a little bit.
One of the things that I've started, I think I picked it up from Cecile. Score what you want. So I'll go in with, particularly with young players, and say we're not going to keep score a regular way. Every overhand swing you make, I don't care if it's a down ball swing or a jump and swing, you get a point for that. There's no points for anything else. And we're just going to swing at every ball we can. But, the mistake thing is a big hindrance. And I even go up in my, we make mistakes. I write the word mistake, misteaks, and they look at me like, okay.
I'm very much like anti-down ball. I do not like down balls at all. Because I don't like preparation when this is your preparation to hit.
Yeah, I hear you.
Like, Your preparation to hit should be getting your arms back and getting ready to lift. Like when people like that ball goes up and they get here, that's not preparing to hit. Preparing to hit is getting your arms back and help yourself double arm lift. So I see so many players that when they get the opportunity to down ball, they're just so excited about it. They're just, oh my God, and it's not a good play. It's lots of errors, no kills, and it's a tempo. Like coaches, we down ball all the time because it's a very easy ball to pass. Like I would rather have them stop and pass the ball 50 feet high to the end line than hit a down ball.
Yeah.
But there's certain things
Go ahead.
There are certain things that I preach that I don't hear a lot of coaches talking about that I think should be talked about more. And one of the big things that I preach all the time is like when the ball is on the other side of the net, we have to look at the ball less. Watch the players, not the ball. Because we're all stuck doing the head thing and stuff like that. The ball doesn't tell you anything. You make sure the ball's not coming over, then you look at the setter. You make sure the setter's not setting the ball over, then you look at the hitter. Because the hitter's what tells you everything. He slows down his arm to tip or he drops a roll shot, something like that. Like, we look at the ball way too much. Like, I know we've all seen that video online where the person, for some reason, they put the curtain over the volleyball net so you can only see the ball above the net. That is teaching the exact wrong thing in volleyball. Like, we should not just be watching the ball. We should be watching the players play. The ball tells you nothing.
I'm going to tell you my solution to that, which I never really got to use enough, but I bought a bunch of safety glasses and I taped them off so all they could see was under the net. And I brought them into a bunch of 16s, and I said, "Can I experiment with this?" I put them on a group of boys 16s, and they were like, "What?" I said, "You need to block, but you can't see where the ball is. You can't even see the player. You just got to block." And they started watching feet, and about 5 minutes in, they were blocking guys blind.
Yeah, I love that. But I mean, it's like the one play that tells me you're for sure looking at the wrong thing is when the setter does the little two-hand set over the net in the middle of the court and no one goes for it. That tells me that everyone is watching the ball, not the player.
Right.
Which we need to watch the player, not the ball. And it's like that is the number. Like I go to camps all the time and I don't hear coaches talking about that at all. And it's like it's one thing. Like if you can learn from an early age, and it's hard because we watch sports on TV, and what do we watch when we watch sports?
Yeah.
We watch the ball. It's what we're trained to do. And it's just that is the one thing that we do not talk about enough as coaches. Like watch the player, not the ball. Like I said, I hate that video of that fucking. So, pardon my French. Of the curtain over the net where we have to watch. Just watch the ball. It's like that makes no sense to me as far as making someone a better volleyball player. It is teaching the exact wrong thing.
Right. Yeah, we call it. But it's also in our gym. We call it building range.
We talk about like having accountability as a player. It's like as a coach, you can't sit there and watch your player's eyes the entire time. It's hard to monitor where someone is looking. So when you coach a player, that they have to take accountability and take it on themselves. Like, hey, this is really important. This will absolutely make me a better volleyball player without jumping higher, hitting harder. But just changing where I look, this will make me a better volleyball player. So they have to have the discipline, which is Marv's definition of discipline is one of my favorites too. Discipline is a promise you keep to yourself. That's Marv's definition of discipline. That's one of my favorite Marvisms too. But it's like cool. You have to have the discipline to really focus on your eyes and make sure you're looking in the right place.
Yeah, that's a cool. That's another cool Marv saying. Hey, look, we're at the end of our hour, so just to be respectful of time, we're gonna cut this off. But I made a couple of notes. 6 months from now, a year from now, we'll do this again, and we'll get more of your own coaching ideas. You hit on two of my big ones. Watching the player, and then we call it building range, getting away from the mistakes or being able to go with speed. So you've helped me a ton.
My first thing in volleyball camps is that I always tell like young players, like, make every mistake. Literally, it's unfair of us to expect you not to make mistakes. Like I say, if you want to impress me, come up with a new mistake because they don't exist. They've all been done before. There are no new mistakes. You're going to make. Everyone's been made by every great player in the world. Make mistakes. Stop worrying about it.
And my thing for coaches to think about in this situation is remind yourself they're not deliberately making a mistake. Don't get frustrated They're
Oh, yeah,
trying.
yeah. I'm all about I'm okay, like as long as the intention is right. I'm fine with any mistake. If you're trying to set a high ball from 30 feet off the court to make a set out of it and it goes over the net, fine. Hey, next time it's going to be better. The time after that's going to be better than that one. So as long as your intention is there, make every mistake. I just don't like intentions that are, bumping the ball over the net when the ball's above the net and stuff like that. It's like, I want your intention to be to make the right play. And if it's a mistake, so be it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, you're a go for it coach. I love it. Same.
Oh,
Same.
absolutely. God.
Yeah.
I
All right,
love
Steve,
aggressiveness.
take us out of here.
No, Tom, thanks very much for being with us. And we'll be back next week. If you've been listening or if you're listening to the replay, there's about a dozen things in here that you can take and apply. There'll be an X on my floor tomorrow. So thanks, Tom. And hopefully we'll see you.
That's
We'll
John
have you
Simon.
back.
That's not me. Yeah.
Okay. That's, hey, what's it? Great artists steal? That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
See y'all
Well,
later.
why does everyone have a jumper? They stole it from Michael Jordan, It's like,
exactly. All right.
Copy the
So we'll
greats.
see you, BJ. See you, Tom. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
We are out of there.